All right, good evening, everyone. Today I'm going to be introducing Eddy Benoit Jr., CEO and President of the Benoit Group. He is a seasoned professional with over 3 decades of experience and projects totaling over $3 billion in value. The Benoit Group focuses on their business strategy and their geographical expansion, with their strategy also being leveraging their core expertise through vertical integration, providing turnkey real estate solutions, and navigating the various real estate cycles. Mr. Benoit emphasizes his sustainability within his projects and his mixed income, affordable housing, senior housing, workforce housing, you name it. He also focuses on pushing for the Benoit Group to have a footprint within the United States and abroad. Prior to creating the Benoit Group, he was president of Ambling Development Partners, where he oversaw their strategic direction, growth, and entrance into new markets. With a long history of experience and leadership in the real estate development world, he has managed joint venture structures within mixed-use projects and successfully led the military housing privatization group, securing over $500 million in value. He holds a Master of Science in Construction Management and holds a Bachelor of Science in Building Construction from the University of Florida. He's affiliated with many different organizations such as ULI and NAOP, and he is also an active member of the University of Florida MSRE Programs Advisory Board. So I'd like to give a warm welcome to Eddy Benoit Jr.
Wow, good afternoon. I didn't even have to pay her to do this, So I have to take you around with me and do my intros. Rarely do I have my daughter give an intro for me when we're having a talk. First and foremost, again, good afternoon to everybody. Is everybody up?
Yes, sir.
Everybody up?
Yes, sir.
Okay, y'all sitting here like you're in auditorium style. But deals are done in the bullpen. So we're going to shake this up this afternoon, because everybody want to have some fun? Or do you want to just have me just talk about myself all night? Huh? Because I'm not interested in talking about myself all night. I just really want to talk about deals. And Emmy talked about, just from a global standpoint, who we are, what we do, what I've done. But again, I'm a Gator, born Gator here, and graduated, undergrad, moved to Atlanta. It's been a little bit over 30 years, and been able to work for one of the largest contractors in the country, Skanska. And while I was at Skanska, I knew I wanted to be in your seat, but I didn't have a program like this to actually pursue when I was here at University of Florida. So I had to take another route and go get my master's while I was working full-time at Skanska, and then pursued my CCIM. And that's where I pretty much got a lot of my finance exposures through the CCIM program. And I worked for a developer soon thereafter, about 3.5, 4 years of working for Skanska and building. I went to work for a developer that focused on mixed-use developments. So any given year, I had either a portfolio under development that was multifamily, retail, office, hotel, industrial, you name it. And so that's pretty much where I got my feet wet. And in 2002, I decided to go out on my own and joined my ex-partners at Ambling. 2010, we split up. It was an amicable split up. We're in the middle of the recession. It was really rough, and I thought it'd be best to change our business platform into something that was more low to moderate risk, and that was the birth of the Benoit Group. Today, we're nearing 14 years, literally next week will be 14 years since the inception of TBG. And between that period of time, we've been able to actually add 3 other verticals to our company, which are, let's see, how does the pointer work again? Wait. How does the pointer work again here? Is there a laser on it? Excuse me. Oh, okay. Oh, okay, I see, I found it. Okay, yes. So we have 3 other companies. One is Renaissance Ops. That's our construction management company that oversees all the design, construction process for our projects internally, but also does third-party construction management for non-multifamily projects. We also have TARE Advisors. TARE stands for land in French. It's a play on words, so that only focus on everything that's horizontal. So we deal with major master planning of mixed-use developments for third-party, program management, and also infrastructure management. Then the last here is Dorchester Management 2. That's our property management company that handles all the property management and facilities management for all of our assets, our portfolio of assets throughout the Southeast and Midwest, but also selective third-party management that we do for certain partners that we have public-private partnerships with. So that's the family of companies under the Benoit Group since its inception. So I wanted to kind of give you that highlight on us. This also gives you more of a bullet point on who we are, where we are, what we've been doing for the past 10 years. And the states that we're actually active in also have operating properties where our portfolio actually lies. So we have a very robust pipeline. What you see here as far as the number of units still doesn't represent the pipeline of projects that we have over the next 5 years in some of these states. And we do have some ambition to expand into Texas, the Texas market soon. So that's not necessarily represented here. Okay, so turn this on. Anybody interested in talking about a deal? See you raise your hands. Man, it's just lukewarm, man. Like, anybody interested in talking about a deal tonight? Let me see you show of hands. All right. Who's interested in talking about a little deal? You sure? That's it? Who's interested in talking about a big deal? Yes. All right, well, cool. Now we're talking. All right, we need some energy in this room. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to change this around. For those of you who've seen me speak before, you know I don't like this traditional setting. Nothing against your teachers, but I'm not in school anymore, so I can do this. So we're going to change this a little bit, and we're going to get some groupings, because this is going to be very interactive, all right, as we talk about the deal. But first and foremost, I want to kind of give you guys a little test. The test is, what does it require for one to actually put a deal together? What's your name?
Michael.
Michael?
Yes,
Due diligence? Okay. Good answer. Your name?
Noah.
Uh-huh.
Money.
Money, as in capital? Okay. Good money, though. All right. You?
Patience.
Patience, what's your name?
Zoe.
Zoe?
Having a vision.
Vision, what's your name?
Scott.
Scott?
People.
Your name?
Wilson.
Wilson? Say your name and go ahead.
My name is Will, and I was saying there has to be demand and a solution.
Okay.
Solution.
Remember, we're putting a deal together. No wrong answers here.
Accurate assumptions about the deal.
Okay?
Experience.
Okay? Did you raise your hand?
Entrepreneurial spirit.
Okay. I like that.
Market knowledge.
What's your name again?
Nick.
Nick? Okay.
Andrew. And relationships.
Relationships? Okay. Now I'm hearing a lot of the soft spots. But what is it? Somebody said capital, vision. What else?
Sean and Luck.
Luck? Okay, all right. Gambler right there. All right, gambling spirits. I like that. Anybody else?
Kyle, some kind of opportunity and then control as well, like a level of control on the
Okay, good. I like that. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper. You're putting your deal together. You have a deal. You have land. You got all these other soft skills. So he said capital. He said vision. What else do you need in order to put your deal together?
grant, the contractor.
Contractor. Okay, somebody has to build it. What else?
Lawyers?
You definitely need those. That's for sure. That's good.
Appraisers?
Appraisers.
Called the team. The approval?
Definitely. So, how about some debt? You got to borrow some money, right? So let me get you in that direction. We got capital, debt, we've got approvals, we have vision, we have land, we have appraisal, we've justified that. What else do we need? So we're going to go off the textbook here. All right? Again, nothing against the teachers back here. We're going to go off the textbook. So this is what happens in the real world. Okay? I mean, everything you said here, all very good, answers. But you need a little bit more. Because every single one of you would have learned, the science of real estate, financing, investment, acquisitions, brokerage, you name it. That's what's in the book. Now we're going to deal with real life situations with people who know nothing about what you've been learning about in this book. And you have to make real deals happen. So far, all your case studies have been just a case study because they haven't been built. We have a lot of those that we've seen. So what I want to share with you tonight is a deal that's not fully baked. It's pretty complicated, but it's moving along because we've already established a lot of the answers that you shared here tonight. So what I want to do is kind of get all of you to get involved with me in this process. So we're going to put some groups together. How many people do we have in here tonight? 7? Okay. 70? Okay, 70. All right. Okay, good. So the project that I want to share with you this evening is called the District at Bowen. This is in Atlanta, Georgia. How many of you are familiar with Atlanta? Okay, so this is the west of Midtown. I know where Georgia Tech is. It's a little bit northwest of Georgia Tech, literally about less than 10 minutes away. So it's in a very, very interesting part of Atlanta, a growing area of Atlanta. It's kind of been a major hole in the donut. And we have an opportunity to do something pretty spectacular, with this project. So this project has been approved. This is the structure of the deal today as we stand. And I want to tell you who the players are, relative to our partnership. And it's not just a partnership from a development standpoint, but a partnership with all the other stakeholders that have a meaningful investment in this deal. So we have here, Okay. So this is, everybody familiar with HUD, Department of HUD, from a federal standpoint? Then we have, this is the city of Atlanta, this logo right here. This is the Atlanta Housing Authority. This is Invest Atlanta, which is the development authority that works with the city on all development deals. This, of course, is us, the Benoit Group. We have a partner out of St. Louis called McCormick, Barron, Salazar. Anybody familiar with MBS? They're, of course, in the same industry with us, a very big firm. And these are our attorneys, Arnold Golden Gregory. Coleman and Associates and JG Consultants are local partners, okay? Has anybody ever talked to you about how real estate is local? Okay? It doesn't matter who you are, how much you've done, but it always boiled down to the local, players. Not only from an execution standpoint, a feasibility standpoint, just also from a political standpoint too. You have to overcome all of those hurdles, all the blocking and tackling, if you're trying to, have a successful project. So what I want to do is, as I go through this project, I want every one of you to kind of really participate in what we're doing so you can see how we actually put this deal together. So without further ado, somebody said attorney. Who's the one who said attorney? All right, you pass that back there to him. And can you get like a group of you guys come a little bit together and y'all gonna be an attorney? Who would like to be development partners? We're gonna put you guys right here as development partners. Community engagement. We're gonna get a cluster view here. Public school board. I'm gonna put y'all right here. Need some people. Y'all also community. Lender. That's back here. And what I got over here? Equity. Money. With equity too. We got 2 equity groups. We're gonna put you guys as lenders too. We got multiple players. Attorneys too. You're gonna be like, man, why all these attorneys? State government. City of Atlanta. HUD. This whole back table is HUD. Who am I missing down there? Public Housing Authority. Y'all missing? Development Authority. Who are we missing? I need a group to be State Housing Finance Agency. And a group to be developers. Okay. Pass these. So you're going to have to make your cards visible so I can call on you. I don't know if you have a book or a bottle of water or something like that. Yeah. We're good to go? All right, perfect. Great job, y'all. So we're going to dive into the deal right now. So this Bowen Home site, again, located in Northwest Atlanta, used to be an old public housing site. You had your old public housing, what we call, you can call it the hood. You can call it just, the projects. That's exactly what it was, okay? That wasn't a place that you wanted to be making a U-turn around, okay, if you were lost. And that housing had about 650 residents living there in homes, 650 units, duplexes, triplexes, and all low income. High concentration of poverty. Thus, crime, low performing school, to the point where the high school was near closure, You know, where's my school board? Right there. Early childhood development was non-existent. You have most of those, by the time they were out of fourth grade, would probably, go, to jail. By the time, with a fourth grade education, would probably, go to jail after, at some point, or be a juvenile delinquent. All of these social issues that were taking place. However, back in the 50s and the 60s, this same area was a very thriving area. It was considered an area where most of the rising and middle class African Americans lived in. Okay, and schools were great, but these communities, what happened is a lot of the kids moved out and they didn't move back after they went to college. They moved somewhere else, and then the parents were no longer able to really, maintain, their properties. There wasn't much growth focused in these areas, so therefore there was a major decline. So what's important here is, here's a deal. And the first thing that we're talking about is the community engagement. Because as you see here, it's a collaboration of the community coming in and trying to create a vision with, who said vision? A vision with us as the developers and the housing authority. So the housing authority was able to tear down, demolish, remediate this site, and it stayed vacant since 2009. All right, nothing done. 74 acres of land. So the first thing we did was engage with the community and come up with certain things that we thought that would be the most important to focus on initially. So here are the 4 things that were the most important to the community. Number 1, neighborhood stabilization, promoting environmental justice, economic development, and neighborhood improvements. Those 4 right here are so loaded as far as what the expectations are. Those little 4 bullet points. We can really peel the onion in each one of them and come up with at least, a full page list for each one of them as far as what each one of those encompass relative to the project. But again, they've been living this environment. Nothing can go forward from a developer standpoint. Doesn't matter how much experience we have, how much money we have, how eager we are to start, until we start here. Okay, so therefore, where's my NPU, Neighborhood Planning Unit board? Up there? So that group right there, they're the ones who actually get to say yay or nay as to whether or not they want the developers to come in. Where's my development group? 2 developers. Development partners, developers, I have another one. Developers. There's 2 group of developers, right? Development Authority. Okay. So y'all just, I thought they did 2, since there's 2 of us that are developers of us in MBS. And then the development partners here, those are just the other local partners in the deal. There's nothing we can do if we do not satisfy the NPU board. The NPU board is a neighborhood planning unit. Every city has a different name, for it, but they really are the mouthpiece for the community. They're representing all of the benefits for the community. They're trying to make sure that a bad developer doesn't come in and give empty promises. You don't want slumlords coming in to their property. They want to get rid of slumlords. So they look at the plan at the beginning and engage. They don't want you coming to their community with a plan that's fully designed without their input, because they can block you. And so therefore, if they're not supportive of what we're trying to do, where's the city of Atlanta? Guess what? They will block any proposals for any zoning requests, variances, you name it, whatsoever, because they work closely with whoever oversees that district, whether it's a commissioner, whether it's a city council person or whether it's an alderman, wherever you are in the country, whoever oversees that area, that MPU board works hand in hand. The last thing you want to happen as a politician representing your district is for your MPU board to be at odds with you. They're gonna have a field day with you at City Hall when your item comes up on the agenda. And the last thing that we want as developers, raise your hand, development partners, we don't want that because we're already at risk. It's a lot of money, a lot of time, even in the infancy of the project itself. So, I'll stop here. Everybody with me? Yeah? Yes, okay, all right. So, we went through this stage, and it took, a couple of months to get all this feedback. Then we decided, okay, what do we do with this? This is the land, as it sits, today, 74 acres. We already talked about that. And something that's very interesting here is that as you see A.D. Williams School, anybody knows who A.D. Williams is? Okay, A.D. Williams was Martin Luther King's father. Okay, so there's a school here that actually had an explosion back in the day, and there were, some casualties, a few children, passed away from the explosion, but there were a lot of survivors who actually still live in this community. So you could only imagine, how they feel about what's about to happen here from a historical standpoint. But there's also a rec center at the end of the property itself that is also named after A.D. Williams, who was a reverend. And so those names, that name cannot change as it relates to those two buildings. So after this demolition, after the community engagement, we decided this is an opportunity for us to actually create a true sense of place. Then if we're going to do that, then what will be the hurdles, to make something spectacular happen here on 74 acres? Guys, this is not 1 acre, okay? It's not 2 acres of land. This is 74 acres of land. This is massive. So we've got to do something that is going to be a landmark here. And they can't be just tall, high-rise buildings because you're in a residential community, an old residential community. And the community doesn't want a whole bunch of high-rises. They want something that they can live with. And that's also going to create, gentrification. So when you hear the word gentrification, some people think about it as a negative connotation, like, oh man, you're pushing people out to build new and bring new people in who are not deserving. That's not true. Gentrification, I embrace it when it's done right. When you can bring, first of all, deconcentrate, decentralize low-income poverty, bring in mixed income, don't displace the legacy residents, tenants that live there. Make sure whatever you're building, is also available for them too. Even if they're temporarily displaced, they have an opportunity to come back to this community. But also bring those who think that this community will be favorable to them based on what you're looking to develop. And also it will stimulate more development. Bring other developers there, create confidence, create more tax increment, create more investment by City of Atlanta, there from roads and infrastructure. So the Development Authority, making sure that they're putting monies, into this deal, or creating, public-private partnerships with other developers just like us. So we decided, well, we have to figure out what's going to be the DNA of this deal. Anybody know what DNA stands for outside of the medical term? Come on. Take a wild guess. Everybody must have straight A's in this class. Tell me. Take a wild guess. Straight A's, because
Develop, negotiate, assemble.
Good. At least you took, give me a pound, man. Come on. We call it the deal needs analysis. What's going to set us apart? Because there's going to be an RFP on this deal. A project of this scale is of regional significance. 74 acres. You can't just come in and put nothing cookie cutter. You can't put something that's textbook on this. And we're like, look, what do we need to focus on this project in order to make sure that we are positioned to compete with, some of the titans in the industry? Because everybody, the who's in the country who have done redevelopment deals like this, of this scale, of this complexity, with all types of mixed financing, they're going to come after it. But guess what? There's no room on our mantles for second and third place trophies. We only have to have first place. If we don't get a first place, guess what happens? No deal, right? No deal, no money. No money, no company. Correct? So we started looking at these things. Location, well, it was easy because we already have a location. Land is here. It's in place. So we don't have to figure that out. Highest and best use. Well, that's really going to be the crux of the matter because we have to be creative, but the housing authority wants to bring back a good portion of affordability on this site. This is their land. Remember, there were 650 homes here and families that were displaced since 2009. This has been their community. Some still live in the community, some live outside the community, but they were displaced from this property. And how do we make sure we provide, based on a redevelopment, housing opportunities for them, work opportunities for them too, both short-term and long-term? So we're like, okay, team structure. Who's the winning team? Well, first we figured, we'd be part of the winning team, TVG. And then called my good buddy, who's the CEO of McCormick Barron Smith, Salazar, and Vince Bennett. And I said, Vince, how would you like to come to Atlanta and partner with us? Between both of our companies and our experience, and they're bigger than us, by the way, we're probably very hard to beat us. But it's going to be very, very stiff competition, considering some of the usual suspects that we knew would come after this deal. Guys, think about it. This is Atlanta. This is city of Atlanta, okay? I mean, this is the home of the Summer Olympics, all right? Everybody, who's in business that is actually looking at scaling up, trying to do a big deal, a deal like this, if you feel as though you qualify, you can put a team together, you're going to come after this deal. So then we looked at the capital investment. How much capital is it going to take? Do we, as our team, both companies, have all the capital that's required to undertake a deal like this? Risk mitigators. Where do the risks lie? What are the major risks here? Because a project like this is great, to say, hey, hands up, I've got this big deal. But then this big deal also can take you down. Okay? How many of you know of developers who are doing well but actually went under? Raise your hand. Okay. So it's real. The risks are real, the risk factors. And what is our tolerance? Somebody talked about patience or something like that early on, okay? The tolerance for that risk. Is it worth it? Market analysis. Somebody talked about market analysis earlier back here, okay? Can we really accomplish what the community wants and what the housing authority wants us to do? Is that financially feasible? Can it work? Are they just, you know, having pipe dreams, they believe in rainbows and unicorns, or is it also too early for a project like this? Is it before its time? Because that happens too. Some deals are before their time. And so we had to analyze that. Capital leveraging. Well, part of the investment stack will have to include some subsidies. What kind of dollars can we get in order to leverage this project up to make it work? No, we cannot do this with just straight debt and equity, or debt, mezz, and equity, okay? And nobody gives you free money for no reason. So just remember that. It's got to make sense. So where do we go after the subsidies that our competition won't necessarily think of? Some are pretty, standard, but then some are not necessarily that standard. You have to get very creative. We talked about the community benefits, okay? Then what's the exit strategy? Do you guys think of every deal that you look at, do you think of what your exit strategy is when you're looking at it at the beginning? How do you get out? How long are you going to hold it? How does it make sense for you? So we got to think of the exit strategy. Is there an exit? Does this even survive me? Okay, my leadership. Got to think about all of that. And then lastly, how do we create something that is so great it stimulates live, work, play, and also allows the people who are there to thrive? That fourth element that's always missing. Can they thrive? And thriving is not just within the four walls of our development, it's thriving as far as the impact that we create outside the four walls of our development, the community at large. To become a catalyst for other developers to come in, single family, commercial retail, hospitality, small, office buildings, to actually come in and continue to build in this community. So now it becomes a true, place, a true destination. When people talk about what we're doing here with this 74 acres, that it can impact another 74 acres, around it. So that was the first challenge. So a lot of the answers that you guys gave here, as I said, some up here, but nothing was wrong, because you got to go through this process before you start spending money, because you thought it's like, hey, let me go ahead and hire an appraiser and appraise the land. Let me go ahead and start spending money. No, before you start spending money, you have to start with your due diligence process. Who is the due diligence person? Who said due diligence up there? You did, right? So this is all part of due diligence before we spend any real meaningful dollars in teeing up the project itself. So here we go. Here's our 74 acres. We decided that we would actually break this up into two sections, this whole 74 acre site. And so, probably hard to show here. So as you see where it says CNI, everybody can see CNI? That stands for Choice Neighborhood Implementation. I'll explain that. So we see phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, phase 5, phase 6. So this section right here is how we somewhat unevenly bifurcated the project, okay, to come up with our strategy. Then everything else that you see with the F is a different phase of the project. And you're going to be like, well, what do you mean by that? Well, the CNI is what is called Choice Neighborhood Implementation. And it is funded by, where are our HUD buddies? Where's HUD? All right. Big money back there. HUD. They actually get to pick 8 projects in the country last year that actually represented all of the key elements that we talked about on this list and more, the previous slide, relative to community redevelopment and growth. And we said the strategy would be to go after this Choice Neighborhood Implementation, grant. Well, when we ran our numbers, we're like, wow. Based on the fact that the Housing Authority wanted initially somewhere around close to 1-to-1 ratio, the 650, affordable, residents to come back. Again, not the exact residents, but 650 affordable units. And affordability is anywhere from very low income, 30%, 50% AMI. I know what AMI stands for. There you go, my man, he's up, there you go. And then you have income averaging for moderate income. You have 60% AMI, that's still low income. You have moderate income, 80% AMI, up to 120% AMI. Some municipalities now are even going to 140% AMI just to support workforce. So we're like 650 units initially was what the Housing Authority was aiming for us to put within this project as we redevelop it. But then they got a little bit more aggressive and said, we'd like to see 756 units. How about if you stretch it? We're like, wow, they're just gonna make it even harder for us. But we work collaboratively to figure out how to do that. Then we had about 1,244 units that is a combination of single family homes and market rate units. So basically, and we've got commercial retail. So basically in this C&I portion right here is where we're putting 756 affordable mixed income units. So there's no building that is all affordable. So it's market rate and affordable and commercial retail at the bottom of it, each one of those buildings. Or each one of these phases, either a senior deal or independent senior living deal for active adults or just regular family housing. So you could literally live right next to somebody that actually makes $1 million, a year, and where you're paying no more than 30% in rent, 30% of your income from a rent standpoint, and you're considered low income. So that's how you start dealing with the gentrification issues. You start dealing with the concentration, decentralizing of poverty. You start dealing with growth. And to make sure that what we didn't want to do is, in these 6 phases, is to just say, hey, let's just plop 750 affordable low-income units here and we satisfy their need. No, it didn't work that way. The 1,244 units here are on this non-CNI phase where you see the F label. And that's all, market rate apartments like what you live in. There's no income restriction. We'll probably have some senior market rate units that will only have an age restriction, 55 and older. So I'm a candidate for one of those units, at this point in my life. So we have to make sure they're pretty plush. And then we're going to have commercial retail. Believe it or not, this whole community is a food desert also. So their best shopping center is a BI-LO. They have to drive in either direction at least 3 miles to get to the nearest Publix or Kroger. Okay? Doesn't make sense at all. So we programmed a lot of commercial, retail in here. This plan right here gives you a little bit more detail of the phasing. But why was this critical? Because we needed this grant. So I'm going to fast forward. We applied for the grant. It's very competitive, HUD came down, interviewed us. They have consultants that also interviewed us. They looked at our plan. They met with all our stakeholders. They met with the community and ultimately awarded us, the second highest grant in the country. We were awarded $40 million, okay, for HUD to participate with us in this public-private venture partnership with the Housing Authority and the City of Atlanta and the Development Authority, which is Invest Atlanta. So I want the City of Atlanta, raise your hands. Public Housing Authority, raise your hands. HUD, raise your hands. Development Authority, raise your hands. Keep your hands up. Come on, give me a little bit more energy. So all of those are invested in the deal. So when we got the $40 million, remember we talked about just leveraging subsidies, right? You remember that part? That $40 million, I need the city to put their hands up again. It unlocked other subsidies that were contingent on us winning that award. So between the City of Atlanta, the the Housing Authority, Atlanta Housing Authority, and we have the Development Authority, which is Invest Atlanta, it unlocked another $88 million. And where's the state? I'm sorry. Can't miss the state. Where are my state people over there? That's what the state. 88 million. That 88 million was contingent upon the 40 million. It was pretty brazen to take that approach because that was key. To get to the 756 units from 650, you think it's not a lot. You're like, man, it's just another 106 units. But it crippled the deal. We couldn't create that much more affordability. Plus, you've got all this infrastructure to deal with. So $188 million was unlocked when that happened. So you can only imagine, we're like, man, well played. I mean, but who's my gambler over here? That's right. We went to Vegas, man. We hit it big. All right. Again, 8 projects in the country were selected. One in Birmingham, one in Miami. Us in Atlanta, we're the second highest. Birmingham project got $50 million. We got $40 million. And the only thing we regret is that we didn't ask for more, so we probably got a little bit more. But nonetheless, we're like.
When you get those grants, I'm curious if there are any contingencies that come along with them.
Oh.
May require approval rights or anything.
There are a whole bunch of contingencies that come with them. But the contingencies are tied to the plan that you presented, because that's why they gave you the grant. You presented a plan, and to the extent that you maintain that plan and you execute on that plan, you guarantee that plan, risk, you fund that plan, and you're successful at doing it, then all is well. It remains a grant. Okay? You don't want to fail at one of these. This is like having a tiger by the tail. And so that unlocked the project for us from a strategy standpoint, $188 million. That was in our proposal with the Housing Authority, Public Housing Authority. Raise your hands again. With the Housing Authority, when we submitted our proposal against the other developers. You got to imagine. Maybe, I don't know what the count was, but I'm sure there had to be a couple of dozen developers who actually submitted. And by the time we got to the second, third round, it came down to 2 groups. Our group, along with McCormick, Barron, Salazar, and another group. And it was best and final presentation at this point. That's where the rubber meets the road. You've given them what you thought was your best proposal, and now there's somebody else who, obviously has also outsmarted you. Okay? They've got something that's pretty compelling, but you don't know what it is because nobody's telling you. And you don't want to doubt yourself. Did anybody say confidence? Did I hear that? Yeah, question.
I was just going to ask what the most difficult aspect of HUD's requirements was to comply with, or what was the biggest ask?
HUD, HUD itself. Yes, HUD, big HUD. No, HUD is you talk about bureaucracy and regulations, compliance. First of all, from an experience standpoint, if everything is not squeaky clean as far as your experience in working with HUD, then you're DOA, dead on arrival, okay? I mean, they're extremely thorough. This is what they do. Their background checks, not only from a company standpoint, but also from an individual standpoint. If me, as a principal, I have a flag with HUD based on something that may have happened 10 years ago, because I had a bad property and I was dealing with a voucher tenant or something like that, I will have a flag until that flag is cured and removed. And that means I cannot do anything that involves HUD type of financing. Even if you're doing a market rate deal and you're looking for favorable financing and that has HUD insurance to get a lower interest rate, you still can't do the deal if you have a HUD flag. So this goes from a little deal to a giant deal. Things that you need to know.
How do those funds get dispersed? Do they subsidize the land, or is it?
So it's a great question, because the land comes in as basis in the deal, because the land is free and clear. So the housing authority, these guys, they were gracious enough to say, hey, we're going to put the land in the deal, but not all of it. All right. So the way we structured this is we said, look, we're going to go ahead and just do 75 to 99 year ground lease that will allow us to also get certain tax abatements by being a partner with the housing authority in the deal, because these are affordable units. And so that helped the economics of the deal to actually support lower rents. Remember, we talked about 30% AMI, 50%, 60% AMI. Well, they're living in a unit that is also at 140% AMI or 200% AMI. No unit is different. If you make $1 million, I live right next to you, your unit looks just like mine if I have a one bedroom with the same finishes. We have access to the same amenities, on their property. And you may be paying $2,000 for your one bedroom, and I'm only paying, based on my subsidy and my voucher, I'm only paying maybe, $400 or $500. Period.
Did you have outside consultants look at your plan before presenting it to HUD?
Yes. So there are consultants that are focused on these choice neighborhood implementation grants. And because there's a scoring that comes with it. So you have to score. It's not arbitrary. It's not who you know at HUD. It is a true score, and you have to substantiate every point that you get on your scorecard. And it's reviewed by multiple, committees before it is actually presented to the Secretary of HUD, who actually signs off on all of the awardees on a project like this. So this was the linchpin, for the project itself, to get this Choice Neighborhood Implementation Grant. Again, $40 million grant, unlocked another $88 million, $128 million in soft funds. And we talked about this. This is kind of like the breakdown of the Choice Neighborhood Implementation, area, which is the CNI, as far as the unit mix with the six phases. So this is the investment. Now we get to the real deal. $750 million to develop this. And that was as of a year and a half ago, numbers. Anybody has any idea how long it's going to take to build this?
12 years.
What's your name? 12 years? Okay. Anybody else? 7 years? We'll take a third. 10. Man, you're on the money. Wait, what happened to the gambling guy? Oh, there you go. It's okay. $750 million as of a year and a half ago. If we reran the numbers today, it's definitely north of 800 million. It's 10 years, and it will most likely clip $1 billion with just regular, inflation, cost increases, things of that sort. There's probably going to be some economic cycle that takes place, and I have no idea what it's going to be like. It's part of the risk factor, but right, with professors back there, we'll probably have another economic cycle, financial cycle in the next 10 years, right?
Yes, so.
Next week.
David, that's the one thing we can expect is going to be a change. So it could be as early as next week. It could be, as late as, 8 years into the project and something, catastrophic happens in our world and it slows us down and we can't complete yet. So it extends, we have to sit a little dormant for another 3, 4, 5 years until, whatever, passes. So $750 million. This is a big deal. This is the biggest deal that we've done as a single project that I've done also in my career as a single project. And so you could only imagine that it comes with all kinds of emotions. You could be elated, just happy, anxious, just ready to go. I mean, I know you'd love to do one of those deals, right? So you could do one in Colombia, but you could also be scared because any mistakes can take you down on a project like this. And you've got all of the complexity, all the compliance, the governance, all these grants, that come in, and you still have to deliver. You have to make it happen. And so, we're like, hey, we have a strong team. We can definitely, make this happen. It's not a matter of us delivering this project in 1 year. This is one of these deals, we call them the flagship, type projects. This career-changing project. As far as what happens here, we do it right as a team. It changes the landscape of that area. Thus, our tagline as a company, changing the landscape. This will be a destination. The district at Bowen, people will say, hey, where do you want to meet for lunch? Where do you want to go bowl? Hey, let's go to, they have the place at the district at Bowen. People will continue to talk about that. Just like for those who are familiar with Atlanta, they talk about Atlantic Station. Okay? Let's meet at Atlantic Station. Well, you're going to that destination. Now it's a matter of where in that destination you're going to meet. Right? Same thing here. As far as the impact. With $750 million, $350 million is for just the choice neighborhood implementation side, the CNI, those 6 phases. So we're able to leverage that $128 million against it. So that was the game changer for us from a competitive standpoint with the Housing Authority. But then you're like, okay, well, what happens with this other $400 million right here in the non-choice commercial and market rate investment? We still have to come up with dollars to leverage against that because the HUD grant, City of Atlanta, Public Housing Authority, and the Development Authority, their funds were primarily earmarked for those 6 phases. So now we're working on monies that we need to tap into. Where's the city? We need infrastructure dollars, city, because we got to build all of this infrastructure here, which is no joke. I mean, if you can see all of this F right here, that's almost 2/3 of the site itself. So we've got somewhere close to a little bit over 50 acres of land that we have to develop to build luxury apartments with some affordability, condos, single-family homes, townhomes, commercial, strip centers, early childhood development centers for the community. We're going to have some municipal space for police, fire, training and dormitories on site, which is what we're aiming for, to have some type of a municipal presence there. You most likely will have, a couple of title lenders. Where are my lenders? Okay, only one. Okay, so guess what? These guys, they definitely want to lend money on a project like this, especially the fact that we've secured $128 million, and they know it. This is a flagship project. They would love to be the anchor lender here on this deal, so they could, put their storefront, whether it's, Regions Bank or whether it's Bank of America. They want their names splattered here, and guess what? They get CRA credits because this was a difficult to develop area. All right, this is a transitional area, so they're investing back in the community, so they can invest money, here in multiple ways that benefit the project, all the way down to just providing mortgages to those who will buy homes on our property, right? Then where's my equity? Where's my equity group? All right, private equity, you're just licking your chops. We have all kinds of equity out here. So we're going to call you guys the private equity, and then back there, raise your hand again. You're going to be just the tax credit equity. Two different types of equity. So the tax credit equity guys are investing in the LIHTC, low-income housing tax credits. And let's just say, I do a lot of business with Raymond James. Let's just say you're a Raymond James Financial. You're just licking your chops. You're like, look, I want to put all the tax credit equity in every vertical building, at least the 6 that they've shown here. 6 phases, 756 units. And in Georgia, we have what's called state credits. So you've got the federal credits and the state credits on any affordable, LIHTC deal that you do. So these tax credit equity guys are going to be all over. They're going to be calling us day in, day night. Hey, listen, we want to be your investor in this deal. And they won't be ashamed to say they want to be the sole investor either, okay? But we have to be mindful that, hey, we want to make sure that we're bringing the competent groups, but we want to kind of split the baby a little bit. So then I've got my private equity, folks here, right? I got some money? You sure? You don't look like you have any money. Are you confident? Do you have money? You want to invest, right? So guess what? You're licking your chops because you're like, man, I can come into Atlanta, the city of Atlanta, and tap into a project of regional significance that's dealing with gentrification, that's dealing with affordable housing redevelopment, that is a mixed-use development. It's the largest that the city and the Housing Authority, Development Authority has ever done. Okay, and I can come here and they've got damn near 50 plus acres, okay, for redevelopment relative to market rate units, commercial retail, small office space, and, single family homes. And you're like, man, this right here is of scale, all right? And you might say, look, we like to put a minimum of $100 million in equity in deals. That's the type of deals we look like, because this is how y'all look like. That's the kind of money you have, right? And so this is perfect. This is right in your wheelhouse, where you know that you could easily, out of this $400 million, remember, on the non-CNI side? Well, if you look at the leverage on that, you probably could easily put, from an equity standpoint, out of that $400 million, depending on what the mix is, let's just say 40% equity, and that's $160 million worth of equity opportunity on this deal, if not more. Okay, and that's at a 60% debt leverage. You guys following me?
Yes.
All right. So, hold on. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, what was it like trying to get investors in the
I did. So I needed to make sure that when we presented our proposal, remember, we had an angle, we had many angles, but especially getting that choice neighborhood implementation grant justified our entire approach to win, what set us apart from every other respondent. But we also needed to come with the capital. So my equity, tax credit equity group right here was like, Eddie, I'm going to stand with you. We've been doing business for a long time. I like this deal, so I'm going to give you a soft letter that states our interest in a deal like this. All right? We're probably number 1 or number 2 tax credit syndicator in the country. All right? So we're going to stand with you. So I've got that arrow in my quiver when I come in. And it's not to say that my competitors may not have the number 1, okay? So I've got to at least figure that could happen too. And number 3 is also, big enough. Then I come up to these PE guys right here, and they're like, look, we only like to place, 200-300 million at a time on deals. Very reputable. We've done business before. Maybe we haven't. Maybe they've done business with my partners that are in the deal, McCormick Barron. But they're able to bring this relationship to the table. So I've got soft letters from them. And they may say, hey, we're interested on the vertical developments that deal with everything with housing. And we want to put equity on that. And we're willing to go up to 40 to 45% equity based on what you're programming here. But they may say that they were not interested in putting equity for the single family homes. Well, where's my lenders over there? Okay? So my lenders over here are like, hey, we're with you all day long. We're coming with all kind of programs. We're going to put a storefront here, a bank, and people can come. We're going to invest even on some of your state tax credits because we can do that. Plus, we're going to provide jobs. Plus, we're going to give you additional, dollars to support any community-based initiatives you're doing, such as like early childhood development, and we're going to provide the mortgages. What you're looking at as far as price point for single-family homes and condos and townhomes are right in our sweet spot. We can finance that all day long, and we're going to come up with a special program for you because you're probably going to have over 250, homes here. Just think of 250 homes. Just think of that. You break it up into neighborhoods. That's a pretty big neighborhood. And they're like, we're with you all day long. We're going to give you a letter also, okay, showing our interest. So look at all of the horsepower that I have. I got one of the major PE firms out of Manhattan, major LIHTC, investors here, major bank over here. I got the Public Housing Authority that's putting land in the deal, is a ground lease, but on the CNI side, but on the non-CNI side, we actually have to buy that because affordability is not dominant there. So it's going to be based on market, value. So some of the money that we'll pay them for that land, they're also using as part of their commitment for the CNI side. So you see how we kind of arbitrage that, okay, in our approach. So that's the creativity that's coming into this deal. Then I've got the Development Authority that's giving us all of these, tax incentives. So we're getting tax breaks off of the land because we entered into a private enterprise agreement with the Housing Authority on the affordable side. Okay, are you guys still with me? You sure you're still with me? Please, no question is, go ahead.
So, you might have said this in the beginning, but did you guys already own the land before all this land?
Housing Authority owns the land. They demolished it, cleaned it up for any environmental issues since 2009. So basically, it is like wrapped in a bow, ready for developers. Where are my developers? To come develop the deal. Who had the question up here? You good? David, you sure you're going to answer? Yes, sir.
Two kind of like questions. One, your agreements, like, are they exclusive? So they can't run multiple houses that are all going after the same proposal. Like, you have that uphill.
Yeah, the 40 million grant is just us. It's this partnership. It's non-transferable. It's only, can't transfer to another project. It's non-transferable to another developer or partnership.
And then kind of related, like as you're running up to, I'm assuming the proposal's coming out before it comes out, you kind of have an idea, you want to go forward with this project. And there's a lot of legwork up front of reading the RFP and release, right? Are you getting all these groups kind of lined up before that? And you're working with development groups and everyone's kind of shaping out, or is it just very formal, out of country?
That's an excellent question. What's your name again? Kyle. I wish we had that opportunity. We had less than 60 days. Once we were awarded Public Housing Authority, they awarded us, the deal, then it was immediate rolling up the sleeves with everybody involved in the deal and to figure out how to get this application, teed up, because there was a deadline, hard deadline on it in January. So we were awarded the deal late October, and then the submission was due the second week of January. So you got to take out holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas holidays. Everybody was working. Everybody was working really hard to get it in, and we were also continuously scoring ourselves to make sure that everything we're putting in place, that we can get the maximum score with the consultants so we can win this. Because remember, everything we did, our proposal hinged on us unlocking $128 million. We don't get this money, it's back to the drawing board, okay? So, great question there, Kyle. You had a question?
It's two questions. Where are you guys in the process now? And then you said it was demolished in 2009, and you're saying it's like a great project, like lenders will want to get in on it and stuff. So why wasn't it done like 13 years ago?
Because it's a great question too. Well, the Housing Authority, was, first of all, they had to get some form of grant and funds released, program funds, to actually go through not only the displace all the residents safely into adequate housing, then deal with the remediation, because that was old housing. So you had this lead, asbestos, things like that. There was some soil remediation that needed to take place, and it sat pretty dormant. So if you think about 2009, what was going on in 2009 in this world? What was it?
The financial crisis.
Exactly. Remember when I talked about 10 years? Something's going to happen. I'm not hoping for it, but it's just, you look at empirical data, it was up and down, every so often. We're in the middle of recession. None of this made sense. It would have been before its time. Had there been an award, they didn't even have, choice neighborhood implementation grants weren't even out like that. We were doing more Hope 6 type deals then. I can't remember exactly the date for the CNI, but I don't think they go back to 2009. All right. But we couldn't even dream of a grant of that significance on a deal like this.
When was that able to be dreamt?
So they started dreaming about it, I would say about four or 5 years ago, because what they were able to do, the Housing Authority, is they were able to apply for a planning grant. And the planning grant doesn't involve any developer. It's just them and a consultant that tells them, hey, this site, what is it, can it be redeveloped? What can you do with it? How can you actually do something that's beyond this site and that also impacts the community? So it's all encompassing. And can you potentially be eligible, again, for a choice neighborhood implementation? There's no guarantee. So you can go through the planning grant. Just think, many applicants submitted for their deals throughout the country, but only 8 deals were awarded. That's nothing. 8 deals. That's nothing at all. I don't even know what that percentage is. So that planning didn't involve all of the stuff that we're showing here on our, it was really more of just the feasibility, the community impact, community redevelopment, really more on a broader scale. And if you could bring in the right developer, the capable developer, and they come up with a plan that scores, then you should have a chance at winning an award, but it's not guaranteed. You had another question?
Yeah, so how long did you guys have your eyes on this? Like, have you been looking at it for years and years, or were you just brought in more recently?
No.
Was there like competition?
There was, oh yeah, always competition. I was not interested in the deal, albeit I have property that's not too far from it. I was not interested. The first RFP that came out, which is the reason why the time was compressed, by the time they selected us, it was thrown out. So they went through a full procurement process and selected a developer. I just, I wasn't as comfortable, competing, on that RFP. I didn't think, that we had, when I looked at that list of the differentiators, I didn't have, a partner in place. It's a big deal. I looked at the risk factors. There's a lot of things that weren't aligning. And we're like, you know what? We've got enough to do. We're just going to pass on this. Because I felt as though that a deal like this really needed a silver bullet. Okay? I didn't know back then it would only, primarily be, we would get 40 million, because we could have easily gotten just $20 million too. Okay? And it would have probably wouldn't have had the other 88 million. Maybe it was only 50. So, but I knew you had to have a silver bullet for a project of this scale. And that's the thing that's also important. Just because you know how to do something, just because you're in the business, sometimes it's best that you evaluate yourself to know whether or not you are the right fit to do that deal, to pursue that deal. Some of the best deals I did are the ones that I never did. I'm serious. Some of the best deals I did are the ones that I never did. Because I was patient enough. You said patient?
Yeah, sorry, what's an RFP?
Huh?
RFP, what does that stand for?
Oh, request for proposals. Yeah. I was patient enough, to realize that, hey, this is not the deal for us. We need to move on. It doesn't meet our tolerance. Or we're not the most competitive, for it, based on what we can propose. Not what we would like to propose, because can you deliver? Because once you get selected, now you have to deliver. That's your reputation. That's all you have, class, in this business, is your reputation. In good times and in bad times. When you go into a recession, everybody's balance sheet looks bad. If your balance sheet looks squeaky clean, that means you weren't doing anything. You never took risk. So everybody, I don't care what size company you have, is going to have some stains, some issues, some workouts. But what's going to keep you in the game from a longevity standpoint is your reputation. Because there's going to be a point at which where my lenders, my private equity, my LIHTC equity, my lenders here, they're not only underwriting the deal, but they underwrite me, Eddy Benoit. How will he show up in uncertain times, doing certain headwinds that are not anticipated? Okay, if next week something happens, how is he going to show up? Will he fund? Will he make the capital calls? Or is he just going to focus on making his developer fee or profit and just cop out or just give us the keys? Because those things happen. They happen every day in this business with people who are practicing just like you will be practicing, in a few months, beyond graduation. So remember, your reputation is worth more than anything you can have from an asset standpoint on your balance sheet. I call that your personal balance sheet and your life balance sheet. that trumps any financial balance sheet that you have. I say that just from an experience. You had a question?
How did you know you were fit for the project?
I looked at myself in the mirror. So after the first RFP didn't go well, they threw it out. They brought it back out, and I paid a little bit more attention to it, and that's when I made the phone call, to our partner in St. Louis, and we ideate, talked about it, and we're like, what are the pros? What are the cons? And we talked about it a little bit more, and we're like, hey, man, I think between the two of us, we should be able to, check all those differentiators that we had right here on the list. Okay, so the game plan really started with just the two of us, and then how were we going to show up from a local standpoint? The good thing is, as the lead developer, we are local, all right? Whereas there's some people who didn't have a lead developer that was local. But notwithstanding that, we had the finalists, the other, group, they had a lead developer who was local too. And so, we ended up winning. But we looked at the time. We looked at the fact that, the HUD secretary, Ms. Marsha Fudge, she has been just first of all, a brilliant mind, and she's been doing an excellent job as far as affordable housing development throughout the country. Just works, and had a chance to meet her, a few times, and knew that, she understood some of the major cities that needed these types of, the funding for these types of major redevelopment, whether it's, places in Miami, Birmingham, and Atlanta. And so we knew that if we could put together a strong and compelling, proposal, and that had as much creativity from a financing standpoint, we would stand a chance, okay? And we also have a mayor who is very bullish on affordable housing. He has very ambitious plans to build over 20,000 units of affordable housing, okay, at all levels within the city of Atlanta during his, he's in his first term, but he's gonna definitely pursue a second term. So that's a pretty ambitious, plan, 20,000, units, but it's not unrealistic. So this same mayor is one of the first mayors that I've seen within less than 2 years in office to raise over $200 million in funds to put in the coffers to help with gap financing on, deals that are creating, affordable housing. All right, and he's not stopping there. He's continuing. He's doing a lot of creative things. I've seen the same thing in Birmingham with the mayors there, going outside the box, these municipalities, and doing non-traditional things to stimulate more affordable housing. So the timing was right, because we had the city, had administration and governance with a mayor that wanted to make it happen, okay? The housing authority wasn't just on its own in this endeavor, trying to figure it out. You have the development authority that actually, the mayor in our city chairs the development authority, which is Invest Atlanta. And so therefore, they're focused. We got their full attention. So we knew if we could actually get as much support from a financing standpoint, regardless of who won the deal, this would have been the right time to actually put our name in the hat for a project like this.
Would you say that you maximize the density of this site in terms of what you were allowed to build?
Yes, and we're still maximizing. Okay, I think there's some room for more. But what is interesting, I love that question. You see these parcels right here?
Yeah.
They're outside the footprint. See, this is part of the main entrance to the project here, right? And so we're looking to acquire these parcels right here, which will pick up another 5 acres. And then we have some acreage along James Jackson Parkway right here that we're another 2.5 to 3 acres we need to pick up. And the reason why we need to pick those up, because those represent blighted properties. So we need to clean all of that up if we're going to make an investment that will probably clip $1 billion by the time 10 years is over, or 12 years. We put 10 years because everybody likes that time frame. Question? Mr. Boisseau?
This sounds like an amazing project.
Thank you.
Has it been approved by the city council in Atlanta at this point?
Yeah, everything has been approved already. Oh, what did I do? Everything's been approved by the city, by the housing authority. All the stakeholders have already approved the project. So I was going to go to the next slide. What did I do? I think I need some help again. I think it's stuck.
And while you're doing that, how did you deal with, if you had it, the NIMBY folks who might protest a project like this?
NIMBYism is everywhere. It comes in different forms. Sometimes there are people who just don't want to see affordability because they're misunderstanding of what the threats may be. So they have the not in my backyard. But then sometimes you feel as though the NIMBYism is because there's just uncertainty as to who is developing the project, their track record. Okay? They want something to happen, but they may not necessarily want that developer, right there based on past experience. Or they may not want the product type or the plan, NPU. Like, that's not what we want. No, we do not want a Walmart here. There are enough Walmarts within driving distance. We don't need to be across the street from a Walmart. What we want is we want Whole Foods here. All right, we don't want fast food places here. We want restaurants here, local and chain restaurants. So those are some of the pushbacks you'll get that you would typically get on a project like this. But it has to be also a cultural fit. And so when I show you, the plan, the overall plan, and you'll see, this is an area where there was a lot of art and culture back in the day when it was thriving. So we wanted to make sure we embraced it. Believe it or not, a lot of hip hop came from that area. Yeah, and they're still very active. They had a seat at the table too throughout the process. This is their community. You'd be like, well, what would hip hop have to do with a real estate development deal? Well, guess what? There's some of the, folks that and that you listen to their music. And this is where they grew up. And they went to that daycare and that school on that site back in the day. And they have lots of influence when you're coming in their backyard. You had a question?
Yeah, when you're pitching to the NPU and the city,
Thank you.
are you going in with a team of people, or is it just you? What's kind of the situation that you go with for these meetings?
Oh, never just me. It's always team.
How many, is it a large team?
It depends on how many people. I mean, if we have a team of, we were to look at the head counts, if it's 30 people, no, I'm not going to come down to City Hall and knock on their door and go in the conference room with 30 people. We're going to go with the people who are really, critical, to the deal itself. They want to see the principles at all time because they want, when they ask for something, that you can nod your head and say, yes, we're going to do this. But then you've got, you may have your finance person definitely who's on the team, who's running the numbers. They need to be in that meeting. And they may not necessarily be a principal, but it's also experience, learning for them too, to be in this kind of setting and experience what happens in meetings like this. You have a question?
I was a little curious about how the Board of Operations looks for the approvals. I assume you have to get approval from the city before you get approval from HUD.
Well, that's why, from the beginning, you have to make sure, again, real estate is local. From a local standpoint, we all had to be on the same page. There had to be congruence as to what we're trying to achieve. And from there, we take it to, outside of the city. We go to state level to see if there's any state dollars. Where's my state government? Then we go to HUD. But we've got to have our game plan. Everybody has to be on the same sheet of music. Because when HUD came down, we were in the same room. The city was in there. The Public Housing Authority, Atlanta Housing was in there. Invest Atlanta was in that room with us, going through the full presentation, and the community, and the NPU, and the city council person, and the mayor. And so when we talked about that 88 million, HUD wanted them to say, each one of them, what their portion of that 88 million was and how it was coming, that they were, based on us being an awardee, they would fund at a minimum that amount.
So did yourself and all your competitors have to go through a full approval?
No, that happens once you've been selected. Yes. Look at the time here. All right. So somebody was asking about schedule. This is how we came up with, the timeline. And again, this is really for HUD as far as when their $40 million would have been used up for the different phases based on the Choice Neighborhood Implementation Grant, and then the other 88 million. But that doesn't mean that the non-CNI side, commercial, market rate units, and single family homes has to, complete by then. We're handicapping that at least another couple of years. So that's really for the HUD schedule on the CNI. So we're saying we're at least going to 2033 at a minimum. Yes, sir.
If you're bringing in the CNI stuff first, are you expecting kind of a lull in cash flows until all the market rate stuff comes to market?
Great question. Every deal stands on its own. No lull. That's the other part. And one doesn't depend on the other. However, what the community doesn't want to see, what HUD doesn't want to see, what Housing Authority doesn't want to see, is that we actually just focus on developing the $350 million side with the Choice Neighborhood Implementation Grant monies and not do anything on the non-CNI side. So they want to see the schedules kind of like, those happening simultaneously. And it may not necessarily be at the same pace, but there could be a situation because each one of these 6 phases, we actually have to submit tax credit applications for them, which are competitive, both your 4% tax credits and your 9% tax credits. So there's a timeline. In a perfect world scenario, we could outbuild the non-CNI side before the CNI is completed. And there's never a perfect world, but it could happen. So we are working on that side. Like we've got our single family, builders, and we also have modular housing that's coming in this. All right, so we could actually bring up housing a lot faster so we can establish, the non-CNI side from for ownership, standpoint.
How are those 128 million dispersed?
They're dispersed per phase. So that 40 and the 88 million, they're released as we, do the financial closing on each one of those 6 phases. Now we're raising money, infrastructure dollars for the non-CNI side on the other 50 some odd acres. Then we're going to bring these PE guys in to invest with us. The light tech guys are going to invest in the CNI side. And we got our lenders here who are going to work on the single family. We're going to bring a developer. Where are my developer? Other development partners. Okay, so those guys represent my single family, development partners. They represent my shopping center, if there's any, small office that's going to go in there, they represent each one of those components. Because at the end of the day, we are the master developer. So any vertical development that takes place, we have to control it, because we can't afford to have one deal go wrong. If one of the components goes wrong or goes dark, then it is a black eye on the development, and they're only going to say TBG, the Benoit Group, and McCormick Barron. And with us being local, they're going to say TBG more than ever, that, it's their failed product. So they can't bring me the wrong shopping center brand there. If there's a hotel pad, he can't come with the wrong, flagship there. You can't come with the wrong, office, structure if there's going to be office there. You had a question? Yes.
It's obviously a very long project, so how do you entice the investor? Do you promise them a return at like 2031?
No. Remember, each building stands on its own. So here on the LIHTC side, their investment, your federal tax credit investor, they have a 10-year, benefit, which is 10-year compliance. Your state investor, they can take it all in 1 year. They can spread it over 5 years. All right? So that is a done deal. Per deal, they invest, they move forward. But if we go back to the plan, each one of these pads stand alone. This is a multifamily building. Probably will be about 200 units. My PE firm right here said, look, we'd love to be involved in this project, and we're ready to set aside $200 million to invest with you. But they know it's going to be over time. They're not going to release $200 million day one. So if this first asset here requires $40 million of equity, okay? It's $100 million to build this. We have 60% debt, $60 million in debt, $40 million in equity. They're going to release $40 million. Okay, so they've got $40 million. This deal is going to lease up. It's going to cash flow. They're going to get their return on investment, preferred return structure on their money. They're going to have the priority. They're going to get most of the cash flow if they're putting the lion's share of the $40 million equity in the deal. So typical deals are either 80-20. They put up 80%. I put 20%. So if I put up 20% of the $40 million, I'm putting $8 million, and they're putting $32 million. And we may have different splits depending on the IRR hurdles on the project. The stronger, the higher the IRR, the more favorable the split is to our benefit as the developer. So then if it's time to do F7 and that one is another $100 million, somewhere thereabout, my PE group right here, they're going to invest the set aside $200 million, as we deliver, each pad. And if we decide to do two pads at the same time, $200 million, we put $80 million in. Okay, go ahead.
How is the, you said there was a ground lease, right? Is that for the whole?
No, ground lease is on this right here. The CNI portion. And this right here, interestingly enough, we are still trying to wrap up the appraisal on this. And there's some notion that we may have a combination of some ground lease, but also straight fee simple acquisition here on the non-CNI. Question?
So you talked about having like favorable debt on a project like this. What kind of differences do you get when building affordable versus just your standard multifamily project?
Well, on affordable deals, just to give it simple, because that's a whole class in itself. But so if you look at a 4% tax credit deal, 4% tax credit deals typically have about 50% debt. If the project is a $60 million project, to build, let's say 200 units, your debt will be no more than about 30 million, okay? And then there'll be 30 million in tax credit investment from our LIHTC folks right here. Both in, like for Georgia, you're gonna have both federal and state credits. Then you might have some other soft funds that comes from, are you guys, where's my development authority? Development Authority may put some funds in there or may give you some tax breaks that help you leverage, your deal. A 9% tax credit deal doesn't have a lot of debt. Typically, it has very low debt, percentage on it because you're getting double the credits. That's 9.4 to 9%. So you may have no more than about 10 to 20% max, of debt. Usually it's somewhere a little bit, lower than that, in that lower range on that deal. So that would be the low-income housing tax credit, side. Your market rate, hey man, is, depends on where the market is, today and how your deal, pencils out. Today you probably be lucky to find, 60% debt leverage. 65% debt leverage. There's a time where you could look at underwrite deals just at 70%, debt all day long, 30% equity. But we're in a market that is a little bit different right now. There's some people who close deals at 55%, debt. All right, because of where the interest rate was. Hold on a second. Let me just be mindful of time here, and I'm gonna get to the questions out of the other way. So this is the project, and I'm going to just finish this part right here and go into the question. I'm looking at the time. This is kind of the scale of the project itself. This is what we call a memorial plaza here. Just to kind of talk about it, just really just highlight a lot of those in the community who are major community stakeholders who have, passed away, and from whether it's teacher, artist, you name it, somebody who is a civil rights activist, all the type of people here that we can celebrate within this Memorial Plaza. This right here is a linear a stormwater detention, but what we needed to do was capture the stormwater in between the project itself. So as opposed to creating just a big old ugly detention pond, we said, let's make it a feature and make it more linear, throughout the project, and so people can really enjoy that water feature while it's also, dealing with all the stormwater drainage. That was pretty creative, with our designers. This is the major plaza. As you can see, here we've got the buildings kind of lined, and it goes from higher density here, and it scales down to a little bit lower density. And in the back, you can't see that. There's more, single family. You see how we're integrating arts and culture, even on some of the sides of the buildings, and to celebrate that part in the community, but also creating this big, plaza here within the square. This is really more of a square concept, okay, where people can come out and celebrate, the outdoor amenities within the project, and there's still walkability, sustainability, but those from the outside also that don't live here can still enjoy what's happening within this district. These are a couple of elevations to give you an idea of what we're looking to do from a housing standpoint. Just some of the architectural vernacular. So.
Okay, so let's give him a round of applause.